a few moments, Chief Arredondo will be addressing the citizens of Minneapolis to give his statement regarding the public safety ballot that is on the upcoming election form. After that, we will take a few questions specific to the public safety ballot question. So that's where we're at. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for being here today. As some of you know that I frequently hold meetings with our media partners, I also am very intentional in doing my best to keep the Minneapolis Police Department as apolitical as I possibly can. However, today I'm coming before you to address the 420,000 residents that I have taken an oath to protect and serve. Specifically, I'm here to discuss what could arguably be the most consequential election to impact the future of public safety in the city of Minneapolis for years to come. I want to take a few minutes as the current chief of police to share my beliefs and thoughts as someone who has served in public safety for this city for over 30 years. Many community members, business owners, and other stakeholders that I serve have wanted to know my thoughts on this, so I'm using this platform this afternoon to do just that. The right to vote is sacred, and I'm very mindful and respectful of that right. Roughly 21,000 signatures were gathered to petition to have the Public Safety Initiative ballot added next month in November. Minneapolis has 420,000 residents. That is roughly 5% of our population. As chief, I'm sharing what the reality looks like on the ground, what our men and women are experiencing, and what I've also seen in my 3 decades of doing this work, and certainly the last 4 years as chief. And I believe I have an obligation to share that. First and foremost, our officers need support. They need the tools, the equipment, the training, and funding to do their jobs. And as chief, I feel obligated to inform those that I serve and let them know the possible impact that this ballot measure could have on the city of Minneapolis. We are at a critical point of public safety in our city. And I never wanted the MPD to be a one-dimensional department responding solely to 911 calls. As some of you may recall, back in 2018, I went before our city council and I asked for 400 more officers, knowing what we could be up against in the coming years. I explained then that I felt that our city was hemorrhaging, and in some circles I was mocked. But you fast forward to 3 years, we're flatlining right now. We are down a third of our sworn officers, and we have asked these officers that have remained, who continue to show up day and night to help serve our communities and keep them safe, but we're asking so much more of them. To vote on a measure of reimagining public safety without a solid plan and an implementation or direction of work, this is too critical of a time to wish and hope for that help that we need so desperately right now. And again, I was not expecting some sort of robust, detailed word-for-word plan, but at this point, quite frankly, I would take a drawing on a napkin, and I have not seen either. Each citizen needs to be well-informed, and as your chief, I feel it is my obligation to tell you and to share with you my honest position on this upcoming ballot measure. As your chief of police, I would not be in favor of this ballot amendment. That does not have to do whether you have an R or a D or an I behind your political affiliations. That is based, again, on the realities on the ground that I see and that our men and women are experiencing every day, including the victims of crime in our city. I feel strongly about the MPD's pathway and plan to move forward. The ballot question went before one of our Hennepin District judges earlier this year, twice. And I actually believe that the judge's decision was very helpful in trying to get voters to understand the significance of what they would be voting for next month. There was also a recent Hennepin District judge ruling against the police department and the city that we need to be in compliance regarding the charter amendment requirement of staffing numbers. And I agree with the judge's decision. And that provides for me as chief a welcome guardrail so that we will have enough numbers on the Minneapolis Police Department to effectively serve our 420,000 residents. Our citizens need to know that they have those numbers. They need to know that they are going to have an adequate police department coming to assist them on their calls and not simply just responding to 911 calls. We want to be there to be an inspiration and build positive relationships with our youth, to protect our elders, to look after our business owners. That is so critically important. These ballot questions are not about me being chief. There will be many chiefs after me. These two ballot questions will dictate the future of the city of Minneapolis and the Minneapolis Police Department for years to come. Now, as chief, I can't tell you what ballot question number 2 will achieve for your public safety if it passes, because no one, including the authors of the ballot or those supporting it, have clearly stated that either. As chief, though, here is what I can tell you ballot question number 2 will not do for you. It will not eliminate tragic incidents between police and community from ever occurring in our city. It will not reduce the disproportionate violent crime disparities involving African-American victims that has been a public health crisis in our city for decades. It will not suddenly change a culture of a police department that has been in existence for 155 years. It will not engender trust or confidence in new economic and business development, tourism, and entertainment opportunities for this great city of ours. It will not help the MPD's effort to recruit, hire, and retain a diverse workforce of caring, service-dedicated professionals. And it will not make it easier for neighboring law enforcement jurisdictions to assist the city of Minneapolis in our crime reduction efforts. All the things that I just mentioned, this charter amendment ballot will not change. So then I urge you to ask yourself, what is truly the goal of this ballot question? Having a holistic approach to public safety does not require a drastic change to our city charter. The future of public safety for our city requires this. Requires all of us to see each other as necessary, not to deal in absolutes, to be respectful towards one another even if we disagree, to talk with each other and not past each other. We need to inspire hope and remember that our children are watching us during this time and we have to do right by them. Thank you. At this time, I'm open for questions.
Chief Arredondo,
Yes, sir.
what do you say to people who say this ballot question is all about or in response to the number of black and brown bodies that have been killed by Minneapolis police?
The question is, what do I say to those community members who believe that this ballot question is really about MPD officers killing black and brown people in our city? Any loss of life that the Minneapolis Police Department is involved in, it's tragic. None of our officers wake up in the morning wanting to take a life. But I will tell you what this ballot question does not address. For every 187 black residents in our city this year, one black person's been shot, just this year alone. A black resident in Minneapolis is 480 times more likely to be shot in this city than to be involved as a victim of an officer-involved shooting. A black resident in this city is 62 times more likely to be shot and murdered in this city than be shot and killed in an officer-involved shooting. This ballot measure does not address that. And I'll say this before. The public health crisis in this city involving our African-American community is not the cause of someone wearing this uniform. Our elected officials have seen those stats and demographics for decades and have not dealt with it in a charter amendment before. So this charter amendment is supposed to change that. I believe that people are being disingenuous, And again, I absolutely support people's democratic right to vote, but 5% of a petition is not addressing the true underlying causes of the public health crisis specifically related to African Americans in this community. I
Chief,
appreciate the question.
do you still, do you plan to stay on as chief if Amendment 2 passes?
I've made it publicly clear, for example, for ballot question number 1 in terms of the governance structure. I said then that for me as chief or any other leader, it would be wholly unbearable to work in that governance structure. My position on question number 1 has not changed. I've had the opportunity to work closely, and I appreciate Mayor Fry's leadership and support during my term as chief, but I will tell you, to have 14 different bosses, that is not a business model we would give to children running a lemonade stand. And so my position has not changed as far as ballot question number 1. I don't want to be presumptuous about ballot question number 2. There's still an election involved. I will say that I have not had those conversations with my family. I promised to do that at some point here, sit down with Mayor Jacob Fry to have those conversations. Clearly, our focus has been violent crime. Just yesterday, we had 3 people shot in South Minneapolis. That is really and truly been my focus, and at some point in time when it's appropriate, I will make that decision. Appreciate the question. Yes, sir.
Can you talk about the memo that went out to rank and file about what happens if there's a yes vote? And is there confusion right now about that?
Yeah, the question was, what about the memo that we as a city department sent out to our rank and file, really talking about what happens when we all wake up on November 3rd and we see if there's the results of that. So one of the things that we are focused on right now, again, our men and women are going to wake up Wednesday morning. They're going to continue to show up. They're going to continue to be out there in space serving our community. They're going to continue to do that. I think the reality is the uncertainty, if it should pass, what this will look like in the coming days. One thing that we know will be a change in the first 30 days, if it passes, is the position of a commissioner, and that person overseeing this new Department of Public Safety. How we go from there, we will see, but we will be committed to providing that service and security to our communities. Again, I don't have a plan. When there were this talk about this ballot being proposed, I was never asked. I still, to this day, no one has ever talked to me about this. Not that they have to. My hope is that the folks that propose this and put this together, that they either have a current, active, reputable law enforcement professional or retired one or someone who's perhaps trying to. Again, I've not ever been asked about that, and so, but we are going to show up. Minneapolis police officers, we've taken a dedicated oath of service to our communities. We will continue to be there for them.
You are confident that rank and file will show up, or are you concerned that they won't?
I'm confident that they will show up. I'm confident that the oath that they have taken, I want to put things in perspective. We are operating at a third less of a department. The men and women who have currently showed up and continue to show up, who during civil unrest have been pelted with bottles and bricks, who've rushed into scenes of shooting victims and applied tourniquets and placed people in their car to not wait for EMS to get them to hospitals to provide safety for them, to continue to reach out in all of our communities. That social contract that they make is far more important than any other type of contract. And so I firmly believe that at the end of the day, our oath, there's nothing in our oath that mentions the word president, senator, chief, mayor, or council member. It's the people. And so I believe that they will adhere to that oath and that service.
Chief, just to clarify, so no elected officials, nobody has ever asked your opinion on as far as anyone who's proposed number 2, the amendment, or any elected official has never asked for your opinion at all?
No. The question is, have any elected officials for this ballot ever asked my opinion? No. No.
Chief, I know you said that officers would continue to show up no matter what happens on Tuesday, but do you fear additional attrition of our police force in Minneapolis if this passes? Will more officers leave?
So the question was, do I fear any perhaps attrition if this ballot amendment were to pass? I will tell you a concern that I have with this ballot measure. There were 2 words that I'm still concerned about that the authors put in there. and that's if necessary. And I've lived long enough in this life to know that we need courageous men and women who will sacrifice themselves to rush into harm's way to protect fellow citizens. Why those two words were even thought of to be included in that ballot, that is concerning. That being said, again, I stand by the men and women of this police department that they will abide by their oath of service. This is a calling of a profession, and so I feel strongly about that.
Chief, I know you've made some changes and reforms, and you had spoken a little while ago about police shootings. But what about just reforms in general? Are there some future reforms within the department you'd like to see to address some of the concerns over racism and just interaction with the Black community?
Yeah, the question is, what are some of the reforms that have either taken place or that we are going to continue to do or work on, specifically as well as the African-American community, but our communities in general? And we have. We recognize that of all of the actions we take as police officers, use of force is probably the most significant and one that we will be remembered often. We are focusing highly on de-escalation. Historically in this department, we never documented efforts officers took to de-escalate, whether they were using time or distance or cover to de-escalate situations. That is a requirement now. Officers unholstering their weapons and pointing it at someone, we have never in the history had to document that. That is a requirement now. We are tracking that. We are taking our force reviews much more robust in having investigative teams that are going to be going out to these scenes and treating a use of force scene as if it were a homicide scene, having subject matter experts in investigations really handle those calls and look at making sure that we're ensuring a thorough, proper investigation is being taken care of. We are meeting with a young people's task force. Young people are impacted oftentimes by our relationships and engagement with them, and that can set the tone for relationships with the police department. We have been openly engaged with our young people's task force in Minneapolis and showing up in their spaces, asking them how would they like for us to be seen in their communities to better serve them. And those measures will continue to take place. We have, prior to May 25th, 2020, we have instituted several different policy changes. Since then, we have done so many different things, and so we're going to continue to do that. Police departments, like any other industry, we continue to evolve. This is not a perfect organization. I wish that I could get perfect individuals in this organization, but I haven't found a place on this earth that has them. If you find out one that does, let me know. But knowing that, I have to make sure that they're properly trained, that they are supported, that they have the equipment tools, that we're having conversations about race and implicit bias and those types of things. So that will continue.
So real quick, a follow-up to that. It's been said that the MPD is broken. Is it broken? And are you saying that of the rank and file that's left, that they're receptive to some of these reforms and changes that you've implemented and plan on implementing?
So the question was, is the MPD broken? The MPD has taken absolutely some hits, but we're standing. And that's evident each and every day for anyone to come out and say that these men and women are not showing up and they're not doing their job. I challenge people to see the record number of gun recoveries that we're responding to, the record number of our folks going out there and saving lives each and every day, working to take intelligent-led policing tactics to get some of the most dangerous criminals off of our city's streets. And so they've been hit, absolutely. They've been on the ring, on the ropes, but they're out there and they're continuing to show up. And so I couldn't be more proud of them in such a dynamic and challenging time right now in our city.
Chief, these are tough words you've had this morning or this afternoon. Have you or anyone in the department reached out to the architect's question to offer your info?
No. The question is, these are tough words, and has anyone, including myself, reached out to the architects of this question, or excuse me, of this ballot question? I've been in many different spaces. I've been having conversations with so many different communities. I'm not that difficult to locate or find. And so, again, this just did not happen overnight. There's been discussions about this ballot questions for over a year. For whatever reason, and again, they don't have to ask me for my opinion or my thoughts. I hope that at some point they might have reached out to someone who's a professional in public safety, but I'm certainly open to meeting with them if they have a conversation about that.
Just sort of piggybacking off of that, you said you're still uncertain about your future, but if question 2 were to pass, how would you work or engage with, again, the architects of that proposal?
Yeah, the question was, if ballot question number 2 were to pass, and I am still chief of police, how would I? We have continued, and I want to make this very clear. This notion that the Minneapolis Police Department has not been engaging with other alternative types of community-led groups is false. We've done that quite frequently for several years. That work will continue. We will not live in a silo. We will continue to do that work. The numbers that I was just mentioning in terms of the number of victims of shootings, I mean, we can't do this work alone. So we will continue to work with them. I will certainly reach out and work with those who are going to lead some of this work in terms of ballot number 2, if that were to pass.
Chief, your response times right now to 911 calls are at 15 minutes on average, right?
Yes.
There used to be a time when 5 was considered too long, probably in the bottom 5 right now to major American cities. How is there a direct correlation to that 15 minutes now, which is not very good, to the number of officers you have, and how would ballot 2 affect that, possibly make it worse if it passes?
The question from Mr. Coles was, our response times are at a time limit that it's quite frankly, it's unacceptable. And as chief, I feel bad that we are at a priority 1 time call that you mentioned. I also know the reality that we don't have as many patrol officers as we did even a year ago. I also know that we have had to prioritize, triage those calls. If there is a shooting that is occurring somewhere in our city, we are going to make sure we get there first and as fast and safe as we can. But if you're the victim of a garage burglary, you are unfortunately going to have to wait a long time. Here's where ballot question number 2 comes in. If it's to pass, and I talked about recruiting, hiring, retention, if you are a potential candidate and you're looking at 2 different agencies, and one is the Minneapolis Police Department, and another is another tier ring department. All things considered except this, there's been a ballot measure that has just passed, and it says you might be necessary, you might be at some point. Does that give you confidence as a possible employee to join this department? People have to think the long game here. We do not need, in my opinion, a ballot measure to do some of the things that people are asking about. The public safety is too critical right now. The charter amendment's supposed to be a guardrail, and if we don't get it right, as the old adage says, if you break it, you buy it.
Chief, what's your relationship with Mayor Fry?
What is the question is what is my relationship with Mayor Fry? I continue to be thankful for his support, his leadership. Beyond a doubt, he has had to lead this city through, again, historically, arguably, one of the toughest times ever in our city. I have an opportunity as chief to see him not only the forward-facing mayor that all of you see, but certainly the tough conversations that we have behind closed doors. I don't like having to call him at 3 o'clock in the morning when Trinity was shot and killed in our city, or 6-year-old Anaya. He takes every person in this city, their loss of life, he takes it very personal. He feels very responsible for that. And so I appreciate, I respect his leadership, and so, yeah, that'd be my thoughts.
Chief, there's been some allegations by certain individuals in this city that MPD has slowed down the response time here. Is that the case?
The question is allegations that MPD has slowed down the response time. No, I have not seen anything that supports that. What I will tell you, again, is when you are dealing with a third of a department less, when you have one shooting, for example, in our city, that can absolutely drain all the resources in that one precinct, as we're talking about response times, right there. So the individual who had their house broken into, absolutely, they may come away with that experience that, why didn't they come to my house on time? It took them 3 hours. But I will tell you, from the data that I see real time each and every day, our folks are out there doing a tremendous job under some very difficult circumstances.
Any thoughts about A.G. Ellison weighing in on the number 2 question?
The question is, do I have thoughts about our Attorney General Ellison weighing in on ballot question number 2? I'm not an elected official. I'm here to serve the people and stay as apolitical as possible. I can't speak for the Attorney General in that regard. All I can do, and all that I have a responsibility to do, is to inform our 420,000 residents as your chief of police, whether you're for this ballot or not. I need to make sure that I'm providing you what I see, the information that's out there, the facts on the ground, and to let you know where I stand with this very significant, could be potential significant move in terms of our public safety.
One more question.
Your message to the people on the north side who are begging and screaming for additional officers, who are listening to automatic gunfire every night, who are basically saying, help us. We're in a helpless situation and they need police. Your message to them, as chief, you say you want to talk to the people. This is your chance to talk to these people.
Yeah. As I talked to specifically, as the question stated, our African-American community members who are in North Minneapolis, who are hearing the gunshots and the gunfiring on a nightly basis, we're not going to give up on you. We are here. Our teams are out there. They know that we have individuals out there who would dare to harm our communities. We know that there are a prevalence of guns out there. They're recovering these weapons as fast as they can. They're trying their best to keep you safe with the resources that we have. We are not going to give up on you. I appreciate Mayor Jacob Fry in terms of helping to support us to bring on more officers. We're going to need to continue to hire, but we appreciate the relationships we have with you. You have suffered a lot. 80%, 8 out of 10 victims of violent crime in our city are African American. 8 out of 10. And I'll go back to ballot question number 2. Now this is just becoming known to people. So we as a police department, regardless of this ballot, we are not going to lose sight of you. We see you, we will be there for you, for your children, and that is an oath that we took, and so we're here with you.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.